Just put on some headphones and jumped on my machine. And I'm cutting rough and it's coming up all nice and clean. My homie's right behind me and he got some stuff to spray. All together now. Let's maintain that turf today, that turf today, that turf today.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Turf Today, recorded on the Superintendent Network and brought to you, as always, by Toro. And speaking of Toro, this is a pretty special episode for us because Brian and I had the opportunity to head down to Minnesota and spend some time at Toro headquarters for the Assistant Superintendent Experience, which they do every year. And honestly, this was one of those trips where we probably got just as much out of the experience as we hope everybody listening gets out of our episodes. Toro is obviously a company that's been a massive part of the golf and turf industry for a very long time. But being there, Brian and I really, getting to see the people behind the company and spending time with all the Toro team, it really gave us a different appreciation for just how much they care about this industry, and more importantly, the people that work in it. One of the biggest highlights for us was getting the full tour of the facility. It was incredible to see where products are actually developed and tested and ultimately put into production. Walking through those spaces and seeing that entire process firsthand gave us a new level of respect for the amount of thought, engineering, and detail that goes into every single piece of equipment that Toro produces. From the second we got there, we were blown away by how we were treated. They went above and beyond to make everybody feel welcome, and they created an environment where assistants and all these emerging leaders could actually have conversations, ask questions, and learn from some of the best people in the business. We also had an amazing opportunity to head out to Hazeltine National and meet with Golf Course Superintendent Chris Trittabaugh. And Chris gave a wonderful speech. There's many things he talked about and hit on that I will never forget. So thank you, Chris, so much for an hour of your time. Sometimes can provide so much for so many people. We see that here on the show. And I was so fortunate to be in a room, kind of tucked in the corner, but be in the room and listen to what you had to say and pass on some of the lessons you've already gone through. And when he finished, I kind of had this feeling of, this is one of those moments that really reminds you of why people in this industry are so passionate about what they do. Brian and I also had some incredible conversations with people from Toro as well as assistant superintendents from really all over the industry. We walked away from Minnesota with a ton of great ideas and a lot of new relationships, and to be honest, a whole new appreciation for where the turf industry is headed. So typically, John Hurst, Senior Director of Toro's Center for Technology, Research, Innovation, and Robotics, gives a presentation on emerging technologies and what the future of turfgrass management could look like. But this year, instead of doing the traditional presentation, Toro switched things up and opened it up to kind of a question and answer session. And you know us, we decided to do what we know best. We basically turned the Q&A into a Turf Today interview. So what you're about to hear was recorded live in front of all the attendees at the Assistant Superintendent Experience, with Brian and I sitting down with John and talking about technology, automation, labor, artificial intelligence, and where he sees the industry going. We had an absolute time doing this one, and we want to give a huge thank you to everyone at Toro for having us, taking such great care of us, and giving us the opportunity to be a part of an incredible event. And Guy, I will never forget that putt on 18, baby. So without further ado, here is our conversation with John Hurst.
Before I introduce our next speakers, how many of you guys have listened to the Turf Today podcast? Yes, I love that. Awesome. Well, we have your host here, Adam and Brian. Thought it'd be fun to do a little live podcast for you guys, or a little live interview. So they're going to do, John leads our Center for Technology Research. So we're going to I'll hand it over to them, and there'll be some time for Q&A at the end, I believe, but I'll kick it over to you guys.
Beautiful. You guys have to bear with us because this is the first time we've done something like this live. We're usually sitting in front of a computer, big headphones on and stuff. So it's a little bit different. We don't get to edit this. Yeah, we are recording it, and we are going to be asking some questions from the floor. John's going to get into a lot of great stuff, and hopefully it sparks a lot of different interest in your minds and get some questions going for him. We just wanted to start off by thanking Toro. There's a lot of great people that work in this business, but the people at the Toro company have been fantastic with everything that we've gone through and everything that we've seen with all the golf courses. And then obviously getting to go through something like this is huge. So if we get a round of applause for everybody that's representing Toro right now.
You guys are going to hear a lot about all the products and different things like that. But one of the things I don't know that they're really going to cover is I think this industry, in all my travels, I think we've struggled with a visibility problem for a very long time. Golfers don't necessarily get to see what you do. And I think Toro has done just a phenomenal job of helping to elevate this profession through their support and partnerships with guys like Adam and I, your Superintendent Network and Turf Today. Also the Friday, they're doing a lot to, again, shine a light on this side of the business and show the importance of all of you and the work that you all do. So really appreciate that. Plus, definitely, they support this industry beyond just some of the media stuff. Tournaments. I mean, I can't tell you, I've probably done 200 tournaments, it feels like, in the last 5 years, and they're always there. And also one of the biggest supporters of the Super Scratch Foundation, helped them to provide scholarships to future leaders. So what they do for this industry just cannot be understated or overstated.
It's overstated.
And ultimately, as you all know, this is a relationship business. I say that as frequently as possible. The relationships that me personally and Adam and I have been able to develop with the people at Toro are just some of my most valued friendships. They're a blast to work with anytime I get to see them at tournaments or wherever we are. It's always a good time. And Mike is certainly the director of fun. No question, he does a phenomenal job. So with all that said, thanks, Toro. Thank you all for being here. We'll go ahead and jump right in. So, John, go ahead, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, that's great. Appreciate the opportunity. So, John Hurst, I'm the Senior Director for Center for Technology Research and Innovation, which boil it down is basically advanced R&D. So we work with all the divisions in the Toro company and went through kind of beginning all the brands. We work with all the brands, all the customer segments to try to identify, problems, opportunities, how we can effectively help make your jobs easier for you. So I lead that part of the company and also lead our robotics technology team. So the team members are developing the technologies on our robotics and autonomous mowers are bringing to market.
Probably not going to be able to really talk about anything you do that, huh?
No, this is going to be a very short conversation. You can just go back to talking about how awesome Toro is. Cover it for the next 45 minutes.
Yeah, top level. Let's see.
Yeah,
we're going to do the tour later. We're going to have blankets over everything so nobody can see anything.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like Halloween, yes.
Yeah. Well, we heard from Dan earlier. He was talking about labor being, one of the biggest issues that we face in the industry. I would just love for you to talk a little bit about the labor issue and we know what Toro's doing to kind of solve that problem.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, labor is one of those, it's universal, right? It doesn't matter if you're in our industry, if you're in service industry or otherwise. It's always one of the big things because it's the front facing part, right? It's the work that needs to get done. A lot of times it's who's interfacing with your customers and things like that. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about all parts of the labor equation, whether it's what can we do for a specific job? So we might go out and do a follow along and do some human-centric, type of role where we're following you along, seeing what you're doing and seeing how could we make that product easier for you or how could we change how we do that to make it easier to the types of jobs being done to, developing products that are maybe easier for maybe a novice to step onto and start to be able to do effectively. So it's not like somebody that's been doing it for 30 years that just knows all the tips and tricks. We want to try to make it more easy and more approachable. And obviously then it spans into things, certainly in the autonomous space. I think we've seen a lot of that is probably the biggest visual example of trying to either supplement labor if you have shortages or if you have good talent, but you'd rather they be working on the more high value spots, you can kind of reallocate them over there. And so it's one of those, it's universal. It doesn't matter who you're talking to. It seems like labor and people is always one of the first challenges. And so there's no shortage of opportunity for us to be innovative in that space.
I think I heard you mention you were not a golf person before coming in this. What's your background? How did you find this space?
How do I find a space? Well, I'm a golf person in terms of I make your jobs miserable, but I think it makes lots of difference. So I absolutely love playing golf.
Is there a solution coming for that?
Yeah, well, I can't talk about that. But, I think originally from South Dakota, went to the University of Minnesota up here for mechanical engineering, roundabout way through Chicago and back here and landed in Toro. And I grew up running Toro, and I always just thought this is an exciting company. And I think a lot of the company law has changed. I'm hoping as you get the tour today and you get a chance to see it, that was one of the things that I knew for sure, like I had to be here when I got a chance to walk through the test department and just see like machines are running and how we're testing them. So that's really how I kind of got into Toro, was just that excitement and kind of the history there. Worked in design development for a number of years, and 5 years ago they asked me to step over into the advanced R&D and robotics space, and that's been really exciting just to take a different view. Maybe from, instead of having the problem to solve, how do we get to production? How do we build it out? How do we take care of quality service, everything, to how to get kind of the idea generation coming in, and then interesting convergence with the whole robotics space at the same time.
So advanced R&D, is it different than normal R&D? Is there like a separation?
Yeah, it's a separate course.
Yeah.
Advanced is here, normal is over here.
Yeah. No, it's in a lot of ways it's the same. It's just how we're approaching, but thinking about the problem and thinking about the opportunity, and really maybe having a little more kind of, call it, green space to operate in. If you're in division, the divisions are doing R&D all the time, right? They're bringing new innovations out, and incremental innovations or new innovations. A lot of times those are within, kind of typical form. If you look at any of the kind of the, trends around, Clayton Christensen, if you read any of his Innovative Dilemma, there's kind of this incremental innovation. So a lot of times that's, hey, the product does this today, we're going to add lights to it, whatever, right? So kind of incremental. And there's new generation too. On our side, we're trying to get maybe further out and kind of look out a little bit further. We're looking around the industry a lot more. So we spend a lot of time looking in ag, looking in automotive, looking in different industries that are doing things that we think are interesting that might be applicable to our space. And that's either from a whole product standpoint to even a technology standpoint, batteries and things like that.
So when we start talking autonomous, obviously there's some skepticism in the industry, but what would you say is kind of the biggest misconception for superintendents and people working on the golf course?
Like my labor comment, it kind of spans the gamut. I think the first biggest one is the assumption that it can do everything, and it can't, right? It's if you apply it to where it's, what it's intended for, it does a phenomenal job, especially the Toro products. But, so I think it's kind of that, hey, it's here to replace my job, or it's going to do everything, to, I don't trust it. So it really, it's hard to say there's one misconception. I think a lot of things we're looking at is, obviously from our side, it needs to be completely 100% safe. It needs to be very reliable and productive. But then if you put it in the spot where it's really intended for, you'll find benefit to it. And I think a lot of people are maybe overcoming some hesitation by either their approach into it. In a lot of cases, we see, like with our GeoLink mold product, where they like the idea that could be a manual machine and it can still do the manual work. And I have that is called a backup. It's like my backup plan. And then they go out and they put it to work, and it actually works great. And then they get comfortable with it. And then it becomes part of the workflow. For the smaller ones, we would call like mobots, like some people call them turtles, whatever. Kind of the same approach, right? It's, hey, this blade cutting system is completely different. Like this, there's no way this works. And a lot of people maybe will start with putting it by the clubhouse or in a spot that's scrutinized, but not scrutinized to the level of having players on it every day, kind of around it in the rough, everything. And it just kind of becomes, getting used to it, getting comfortable with what it can do, and then understanding what it can't do. So you can put it in the right places, and then, kind of adoption to it and get used to it.
What's a typical time span between conception to getting to market? If it ever does make it to market.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So maybe if I was to think about it, say the division. So when I say division, I mean like commercial division. So golf and grounds, landscapes and contractor, it definitely spans. A lot of that spans for like, what's the duty cycle, right? So residential product, and I lived in the residential space for a number of years. You might have an idea and you're into market it in 12 months. And because a lot of that is just demand, right? The demand is there. The space is moving fast, but it's also not a product that needs to last for, 10 years. It needs to, but it's not going to be 10 years of commercial duty, 10 years, right? And so kind of the idea to implementation, it certainly varies by product. It also depends on how big the idea is. Is it completely new to the world? It takes more time because it may be market adoption, understanding how it works, where it doesn't work, versus, incremental innovation, which is usually can be more like annual cycle or biannual cycle kind of approach.
How far ahead are you looking?
Can you tell us?
Yeah.
I mean, if that question makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. I think, and we had a couple members here. I know Josh and Troy introduced themselves. And I think the short answer is, from a divisional standpoint, we're always wrong because we're either way too far out or way too close. But a lot of it kind of varies, and a little bit, I would say, general rule of thumb is we maybe try to be 5 years out, because 5 years is a reasonable time to maybe be out there to say where it's at, to understand where it's at on maybe adoption, or if you've ever seen like the hype cycle, the Gartner hype cycle of, inflated expectations to disappointment. Kind of where is the technology in that span, and what's the kind of customer readiness for adoption? And so if we're 10 years out, we're so far out, it's like, that could be 10, 2 decades away. If we're a year out, well, we're too close to kind of current production. And so we're trying to balance that. And in some cases, if it's a known industry, we might be, a little bit maybe further out if we want to do something radical, or maybe a little closer. If it's all new to the world, we might be trying to get a little bit closer to where we think the customers are ready for adoption. Because there's lots of examples where you bring something out that it's so advanced and so people can't wrap their head around it. It works great, but just they can't figure out how to incorporate it into their business. So it's a balance. So it's kind of the world we live in. So
I wanted to ask you about AI, because everybody's using it in their job now. It's a big part of the world. Where is it? Is it being used at Toro at all, or do you see it being a part of our industry going forward?
Well, it's great at making fake pictures if you guys like to do that. I joke that because that's where most of our friend groups, that's what we're all doing it all the time. It's definitely being used. I think it's absolutely on the hype cycle. And it's kind of a question of what is the hype cycle? It's going to have a place. It's got a place. I think it boggles my mind the amount of money being put into it on the infrastructure side and how that's being rolled out. But I think from our standpoint, there's lots of different layers that we're absolutely using it. Certainly it has a lot of value in bringing like digital products forward sooner. So you can go in and concept and get people experiencing, like whether it be an app or a web interface. There's a lot of things we're doing on, say, operator manuals, service manuals, things that have been like printed and stored forever, and making it more indexable and easily searchable. And I think the spot that we're trying to understand is a lot of the things that are developed at the company, especially the software enabled ones, are, their safety systems, things like that. And so how do you help us enable that, but not get into that safety network and start to program and things like that? So it's a lot of the kind of the peripheral part of bringing a product to market is really how we're leaning into it. But it's no doubt it has a space. It's no doubt that, even from the eons of, machine learning to whatever, we've been on this journey for a long time. It's just very much right now in your face everywhere you go. And we're actively experimenting about where we think it could bring value to us, and not just burn through a bunch of tokens making pictures.
Trying to figure out how I would phrase this question. This might be something where maybe some of the regional reps chime in too. But, in my experience in this industry, there are not that many people that want to be the early adopter. You mentioned that earlier. There's high expectations at these clubs. They want to use something that's tried and true before they introduce it to their golf course. So I guess the question is, like, how do you encourage or how do you figure out when that time is right to actually, get this in their hands and this is ready to go? Like, listen, guys, we're good.
Yeah.
Does that question make sense?
No,
I'm really good at asking questions that don't make any sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And I think there's a few examples even just coming off of the spatial adjust turf rent conversation, where there's an element of, is this ready for us to go out and do beta tests? And I think we're very fortunate, as you talked about, relationships. We have some phenomenal relationships right here in the metro, and got some good members here just there where we can go. We've been working with them long enough, and they're willing to try some things for us in a controlled space, right? So we can do some test cases there and some other locations. And that's true whether it's golf or other industries, where we try to find that intersection of those that are leaders in their field that are willing to try something that's kind of new to the world in a very controlled way, where they know it's not going to disrupt their world or things like that, and give us like real feedback. So it's not hey, how great this is. We want to hear everything about it. And so we've got a number of examples of that, whether it's, spatial adjust, a lot of their autonomous mowers have been testing a lot of facilities before we brought it out. I mean, multiple years of testing. And that dates back to products take it back to 1919, whatever, when Town of Columbus, hey, can you go try this out? And a lot of it, obviously, it always helps if you have a customer that has a problem and we're working with them and understand what the problem is. They're much more willing to try something new to the world because they're trying to solve that problem. And then you do that enough times, get enough feedback, and you can kind of iterate it on it and work to bring a sellable product to market. So it takes a lot of iterations. So
it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I'd love for you to just kind of expand on that. I mean, I think those partnerships and talk about just the communication cycle of working with those partners and, how you handle that feedback and then, how you maybe implement some of the changes. Just what's that kind of look like?
Yeah, I'm trying to think something that's maybe on the market today, so I'm not behind the scenes too much. But I think, so I'll just go back to robotics since that's kind of in the space. So like our GeoLink, E3360 GeoLink mower is a good example, right? So really interesting journey there where, in our advanced R&D space, 20 years ago, we were working with the University of Minnesota on prototyping concepts like that. And they can demo units, getting customer feedback and some feedback on it. The technology was not ready, right? You could definitely tell this thing was clunky and it's like, there's no way a superintendent's going to want to adopt this. There's just way too much going on with it. And then as you go through that evolution and technology starts to improve, we saw the opportunity and the TurfLinks company out of Portugal had been developing a fairway autonomous mower. And so through that understanding of where they were and our adoption, we were able to acquire them. But that was, as you can see, if you know anything about like innovation space or startups, it's a lot of times it's really good to then get out and show stuff, but then you get into it and you're like, okay, is this really Toro ready? Does it have the software? Does it have all the, the durability? And so it took multiple years to kind of work through that cycle. And through that cycle, you get to whether it be an alpha build or a beta build, a kind of prototype build, and going out with customers, inviting them in here, having them give us their feedback. Events like this, where even though you're outside tomorrow, you probably won't see like new to world, but you're constantly giving us feedback, whether you know it or not. We're listening. We're trying to see like, what can we do for you? And so with that GeoLink mow, it was, placing it here locally, and they got too much, but like Interlochen was fantastic. They're really good about trying things out and just giving us like, get it out of here, or this is great, I want to keep using it, or I would buy it if it did this. Those are great comments. Had it based out in Colorado, other locations where you're getting feedback. And obviously we love praise. If it's critical, we take that too as engineers. We go back and we cry a little bit, then we come back and fix it. But it ties back a lot. You say the relationship part before. So we're asking a lot of our partners when we put something that with them, right? We're exposing ourselves, but we're asking a lot of them to say, hey, go try this out. And they're taking some risk to do that in terms of what they need to do to get their job done. It's always the additive work to their day to go, here's something else they got to deal with, right? So we ask a lot of them, but in return, we're listening to them and we're trying to bring the value forward. And my most fun examples of that is like when you have it out there and you get feedback on, cutting height or real height or just whatever, we go back and we fix it, we bring it back and they see that their feedback was directly to it. Like lots of great examples where like, yep, they listened to me and they actually did this right. And that builds that trust, right? So foundation of what we all do, whether it's with your course, your relationship to whatever, is that trust part. And so building that trust and that mutual respect, is a big part of being able to go out and get real feedback. That's not, trying to hide and make you say things you want to hear. It's really, this is how good or how bad it is. This is what's great about this, what's not great about it. It really helps us go back and iterate on the design.
You mentioned go back and cry. How much do you have to fail before you succeed?
Oh, that's a great question. Ideally none. But I would say I've been at Toro for 25 years. I thought I'd be here for 3.
Sucked you in, eh?
It sucked me in, but I didn't hopefully evolve, I don't know, maybe we'll lead Toro, but it's fantastic culture, products, whatever. I would say if we don't fail on some part of the journey, then we've done it wrong. It's kind of my general view. And now you want to obviously, much like we were talking about kids earlier, it's like you want to have them have maybe little failures where they can kind of learn from it, but not get too hurt. So we want kind of the same thing. And a little bit from my view is, at least especially in advanced R&D, is if we're not having failures, then we haven't pushed the boundary far enough. In a product development cycle, certainly you want to figure, I don't know if you're familiar with product development cycles, but typically we'll have like what's called like a 1.0 concept gate where it's like, hey, what's this thing? and then a 3.0, which is like, hey, things are looking like this, and then 5.0 is like production. So for us, we'd rather fail than a 1.0 when we're just kind of getting into it and the investment's smaller than to bring a 3.0 or a 4.0 product out to you and you're looking at it and you're saying, this is a piece of junk, like it doesn't work. Well, at that point, we've failed miserably, right? So I always like to fail, but I like to fail early, fail often, and then you can iterate quickly through that, and it makes the whole rest of the process go much more smoothly. Beautiful.
So, John, I wanted to ask you a question that we get online a lot about autonomous mowers. Talked about that the autonomy is going to be taking over the labor and helping you solve labor problems. But that's not really a big deal when you come to a bigger golf course, right? It's the little mom and pop shops. It's the smaller golf courses that can't afford a autonomous mower. So what's the message to those types of courses about the technology? And if you could recommend one piece of technology for them to kind of get started, what would it be?
But, overall cost is hard for all of us, right? Like all of your, if you're managing budgets or whatever, it's like, hey, I want you to go get all this, if you got a clubhouse that wants to get all this new technology, but your budget stays the same. It's like those two don't add up.
Doesn't
right?
work. Yeah.
But I think where we see a lot of that opportunity, and I think a lot of it, if I think about, the smaller courses, the ones that are, municipal or whatever, smaller budget ones, is they're stepping into it no different than the other courses, but they might be stepping in with some of the smaller mobots, right? So because the cost to entry is much lower, but it has to go in a certain spot, it's running a clubhouse. Maybe if they start on the range, right? It's a spot that's like high, a lot of labor. Maybe you got teenagers out there just driving all the balls to the ground, running them over. So you got a cost there, but it's starting those spots and kind of understanding where their constraints are, right? And kind of what's people they have on staff. Cause that's one of the evolutions through this is there is some technology to this. There is some maintenance to it and where they want to be from if I'm running a normal crew and going out and managing cycling, or if that person is going to go manage, 5 mobots or whatever in the rough, there's still maintenance involved there, but kind of understanding kind of where their problem areas are. But, the easiest example I always say is, start on the range, start around the clubhouse, get comfortable with it, and then you kind of expand it out from there.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd also say the other side of that is, like we're talking about like the 3360, Geolink mow is, yes, it's a bigger investment, but it's still a fixed asset you got the opportunity there to use it as a manual machine or automatic. And, but it becomes kind of like where they're at, kind of how they fit that journey and kind of how they can fit into their budget cycle and things like that.
You talked earlier about like kind of keeping an eye on big ag. How much do you see that trickle down effect and kind of how, maybe where are they now, that some ideas that they're using now that might be making their way over here?
Yeah, big ag is an interesting one and it's been cyclical for them as well, I think. And there's kind of, different sequences there, and whether it's kind of the evolution from pure mechanical even to software enabled, right? So that was a sequence that they went through and we followed kind of suit in a similar way to, for a period of time there when automotive was going ballistic, and only bit it follows the car industry, but, in the mid 15s, like, and through even, kind of 22, like electric was going to be everything. Ag was doing the same thing. So they were doing heavy investing in battery and everything. So understanding kind of how they were following. I think a lot of it today, if I think autonomous, like RTK and roll following or crop following or driving tractors has been around for a while. RTK on tractors have been around for 20 plus years, right? It's similar technology what we're using today, more precise, but that same kind of concept to, Deere and others out there showing, kind of the vision systems and the self-tracking systems. And so you're seeing a lot of parallels there. I think the thing we're kind of following around a little bit and kind of being interested in some of the precision, ag part of it, kind of where could that apply to our space, knowing that, we're effectively very precise, farm fields, right? In a lot of ways. And is it, are you talking like spot spraying? Like, yeah, if you've seen spot spray, things like that, you've seen a lot of that. It's, you start to see it coming to turf. You've seen a lot in the ag shows where it's a specialty part of it. But is there opportunity in there is kind of what we see is, knowing that that's part of our management practice, and is there things that can be drawn over from that?
So you mentioned working 25 years for Toro.
Yep.
It's pretty incredible. Has there been any technology that you've really seen really exceed everybody's expectations?
From a technology standpoint, that's an interesting question, right? Because where do you find technology, right? Do you find technology as a 648S going from all, mechanical to, a drive-by-wire system for their aeration? That's absolutely technology.
Mm-hmm.
To, new product innovations that kind of didn't exist before. or, like our 30-inch Time Master, Turf Master, if you're familiar with that, where that segment didn't exist before, to things like the 5010H, where, we basically solved some Tier 4 issues, solved engine issues, and brought forth a really interesting solution with kind of that power match and all that. So it's hard for me to kind of point to like one technology thing, but it's super fun to kind of put the product roadmap up there and kind of point to each one and say, this was the first that did this. This is the first that did this. And, even when you walk the hallway today, you'll kind of see, which is great when they built this in 2014, because given a tour now, you actually get to do kind of a little chronological tour. But you'll see, things like a plug-in, greens mower from 24 that Sam Clapper invented. So revolutionary. Now, plug-in power on a golf course back in 1924. You can see why it didn't stick around at that point in time. But then, pretty much right next to it is an all lithium, the first lithium greens mower. So there's lots of cool things you can kind of point to when you walk around and say, yep, first. And all those first always come with a challenge. It comes with a challenge of market adoption. What's the customer experience? Does it meet their needs? Where's all that? But it's hard to kind of point out one specific.
There was never a party like, oh, we hit it out of the park. This was the best.
Yeah. Certainly we do that. I mean, that's part of the cultural thing, I think, is that you go through any product development. By the time you get it out, it takes a team effort, and you always hate to say that, but it absolutely does. Mm-hmm. And so we celebrate that all the time.
Nice.
We always celebrate a launch and make sure the team and that was all the part of it is part of the recognition for sure.
From early morning checks to end of day tasks, the Toro Vista is built to support your daily routine. With gas or electric options and a steel bed for your tools and supplies, Vista delivers a smooth, reliable ride. One that can take you from the shop to the clubhouse, interacting with members and surveying your crew. It's quiet, it's comfortable, and customizable to your course's brand. Vista is built for work and made to move. Get your go-to work vehicle today at toro.com/buildyourworkman. Only from Toro.
You guys are developing new tools, stuff like that. How much of the R&D phase goes into components, finding the right steel, finding the right this, that to kind of make up the product?
That's a great question. And again, kind of if it's I would call it I don't know if we call it the little R or the big R on the advanced R&D, but certainly there's lots of things that started in advanced R&D that were problems to be solved that didn't exist before, that our team was able to get into, understand. And a little bit of the running joke is whatever we make is never what makes it to production, because what we make is completely new to the world. And so you're kind of, it's like first time you've done anything. Is the first time you ever did something for the first time ever perfect? No. But the second one, you figured it out. So there's lots of examples of that where maybe it's a different technology. Certainly battery technology was a lot of that, as we looked at even our hypercell today and kind of the origins of that, to a lot of prototypes we do, and even examples where they talked about the precision sensor. They showed the example of kind of early sensing. A lot of that early sensing, I've got slide decks of Troy when he was 12, I guess, out there doing, soil moisture sensing, kind of manual, to wearing a backpack with an RTK, to seeing where that went to getting to production on different things has been super interesting. But that's part of the challenge with our advanced R&D, is that you look at your current supply chain and say, does it exist? Okay, is this a thicker gauge steel than what we have? Okay, big deal. We can do that all day long. Division can do that. But it's things like, I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but maybe it's because it's when I first came into Toro, I worked in the portable power. So like blowers, trimmers, all blah, blah, blah. And we invented the ultra blower, which had a magnesium impeller. So the central fan that goes on it. Never been done before. Well, that wasn't just hey, let's do magnesium and go see it. That was, why should we do that versus aluminum, die-cast, XYZ? And so you go through that cycle of kind of why is it unique, and what's the problem that we had to solve, and can we solve it with our current partners or our current supply chain, or we need to find somebody new? And certainly we've had a massive expansion of the newness as we moved into hybrid and electrified products with a different supply chain base than what we had before. That required a lot of good collaboration with our team, with the division, and other partners to get there.
How difficult is it for you to dumb down the conversation about this? I guarantee, if you want to get into the weeds and talk specific stuff, it's going to be way. Oh, yeah. And we appreciate you just talking normal. This is great.
So we got to ask you about cameras, drones, trail cams, dash cams, all that kind of stuff. Do you see that being a part of our industry going forward?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then I think drones is an interesting one, right? As we talk about kind of the AI hype cycle and, I'm sure a lot of you attend shows and whatever. And it seemed like 5, 6, 7 years ago, you couldn't go anywhere without it being like drones are going to take over the world, right? It's going to do everything for everybody. And much like a lot of technologies that went through that hype cycle, and it kind of, so when I say hype cycle, it's like, hey, it's going to do everything, to, oh, geez, it's not really good, to where does it actually fit? It would definitely come out of that curve and you come up here on how to call it the drone technology and on what it can do, what it can't do. Some things that's in nefarious ways over in Europe right now, but it's absolutely got a place. I think the challenging part is, regulation meets technology. And how the drones get, approval, we see a lot of opportunity for golf to use drones, but it's got a lot of restrictions around how it can be used and licenses, things like that. But the cameras, the NDVI sensors, the things like that, I think is absolutely, here to stay. We're going to be leaning into it. If you think about, interesting thing about autonomy, right? So anybody running autonomous mowers today at home or for work, right? So they're fantastic, but if my personal experience, having run it at home, having run it here, is, and I come from somebody that I used to love to mow my yard. This was great. Like, I love the smell of fresh cut grass. And when my kids were into sports and everything, I'm like, I don't know when I get this done. Right. And so that intersection with the mobile for me at home was great. But, even this summer, I'm walking around my yard. I'm like, man, there's weeds all over the place. Well, normally I'd be out mowing, I'd be seeing it, and I'd be talking. So I think that's one of the challenges that we have as you start to adopt it is it sounds great. It's maybe your labor's over here working in the bunker or somewhere else, but you lose that visual sandy check, visual cue on what's going on. And so I see just a massive opportunity for us in cameras and sensors to not overwhelm everybody, because the last thing you want is more chaos, unless I'm wrong. It'll be like chaos. I doubt it.
These guys deal with it enough.
Right, exactly. But I think a lot of stuff that, we talked about, whether it be turfgrad with a spatial adjust, a lot of things we do in capturing visual data, is we need to do that in a way that's meaningful, that can allow you to make a decision or have it done for you in a way you can trust, and not just like barrage you with a whole bunch of new information, because that's just chaos. And so chaos does not play well when you live in a chaotic world already. And so I see lots of opportunity with cameras, all those sensors, and whether it's on traditional products or even autonomous products to bring out more information, more how we take care of the courses and things like that, and for the customers.
What types of things, is there something you think the technology cannot solve?
It's a head scratcher. Golf game.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go back to that. Yeah.
Golfers.
Yeah. And obviously it's kind of space at time. And I speak a little bit from kind of the here and now and kind of where we are with, call it the emergence of autonomy, which in a lot of cases still very directed autonomy. So I think it's going to get adaptive autonomy. But then you look over here and you see the humanoid activity and everything else. So who knows what the world's going to look like in 20 years. But it is hard.
It's your job to predict.
Yeah. R&D.
I told you
it's advanced R&D.
Yes, yeah. So we talk about it later. But I think the human behavior part, like you said, humans are humans, and it's which is great. But we all have our different quirks, different approaches. I think you've got generational changes with work ethic and all those other things kind of mixed in there, and so you're running into this interesting intersection of technology and labor and if I would say generally kind of unease with where AI is and what it's going to look like. And so a lot of things we're focusing on is, reduce the chaos, make it simple, make things, high quality, less inputs. We talk a lot about that, and, great outputs, and kind of de-chaos the situation, if I was to kind of frame that.
When you started 25 years ago in this company, could you imagine we have some of the technology that we have right now in this industry?
No way. I mean, no different than when I walked in the door 25 years ago. I thought, oh, Toro, they're a great residential walk mower company, right? Yeah. I mean, and I grew up in South Dakota, right? So like, kind of maybe a somewhat narrow view of what the world was, and not a lot of golf courses out there back then, especially not Western South Dakota where I grew up. To walk in and see just the extent of the line and understanding kind of the strength of golf and everything else. And, but a very mechanical time. right? When I walked in there, it was like very highly hydraulic, mechanical. And then over here, we had some plug-in power tools, and that was kind of the extent of it. And you would never have looked forward now to saying, oh, wow, there's this robot doing this job over here while I'm taking care of other things, to, data being captured and looking at like fleet management on a screen and seeing where all the fleet is and how productive they are and how many acres per hour they're running and if they're running any faults. And it's awesome. It's super. I've been geeking out. Sorry. Very cool.
Well, it's perfect. That leads me into my main question I really wanted to ask today. And Brian can ask another one and we'll get into the floor because I'm sure you guys are pretty excited to get John some questions here. Might take you a minute to think about this one. I want a really good answer here, okay?
Oh boy.
So if we gave you an unlimited budget, not that Toro doesn't have an unlimited budget, but we gave you all the money in the world and said, please solve a problem in the turf industry that doesn't have a good solution right now, what would you build?
Can I phone a friend? What would I build? Something that could have all your players always say everything looks awesome. Is that feasible? There's no complaint department. The complaint department box just goes down to somewhere else. Wow, that's a great question. And I think about that, and obviously kind of putting the golf hat on, is there's so many problems or so many opportunities, as we like to call them, and it goes from on course to the clubhouse and beyond. That's a fantastic question. I think if I was to you talk a little bit about kind of our future state, and again, I always don't want to. I'm a good hand waver, so I'm just waving my hands if things are happening. But in my world, I think this idea of kind of the connected golf course where everything is kind of in harmony and you've got your team out there that are doing phenomenal work and the machines and the data is all working it's like a unit. So it's, instead of being like machine, it's like part of the crew. It's like part of the team that's bringing it to life, and really working well as a kind of a real collaborative, kind of interface. So that's a very hand wavy thing, but that's kind of when I see kind of where we want to get to, is it's all interworking and it just works like just a well-oiled machine, and to the point where people are creating great products and feeling good about what they're doing. They know what their value is. They know what they're bringing, and the products that we bring to it, whether it be digital or otherwise, are helping do that in a way that they feel like it's like a very unified team.
Is there ever a conclusion to your work?
No.
I was going to say, but you send something out and then you're constantly tinkering.
And like I said before, I mean, the world around you is constantly changing. And, if, a lot of times I try to pull examples in and maybe that are outside of the world because people can relate to that. But, I was one of the stories I give. Anybody ever shop at Block or go to Blockbuster? Maybe your parents went to Blockbuster. Yes. I'm dating myself, obviously. But one of the examples I always love to pull out of that is kind of the Blockbuster, Netflix overlap. And it's part of the innovator's dilemma if you've ever had a chance to read that. But, the world outside you is constantly changing. So back in 2000, Blockbuster could have bought Netflix for like $50 million. Whoops. Right. Kind of a song. Right. Yeah. And, but they didn't, because they thought there's this mail-in thing. Nobody cares about mail-in. The experience is going to the store, and having gone to the store, wanted to get the new release and it's already sold out. They forgot about that part. But anyway, they thought they were on top of the world. And here's this little Netflix startup. And before you know it, like Netflix went through the roof, and Blockbuster, doesn't exist other than maybe a meme on Instagram or something. But what was interesting is it was that dynamic, but you think about your own personal interface at that point in time. So anybody know like what came out in 2007? It's in everybody's pocket. iPhone. So iPhone New to World 2007. Around that time, or before that time, again, I'm dating myself, but what did internet used to sound like?
Dial up.
Beep, beep, ba-da-ba, right? So you have this interesting intersection of everybody's got a phone in your pocket, you've got high-speed internet, and everybody has a very much an on-demand for everything. And so that idea of going into a store to look for something that's there is like, why would I do that? I want instantaneous relief, gratification. So it's a roundabout way of going to say there's all these outside things that we're looking at. And so here's your point. It doesn't ever stop, because there's constantly things out there that we find are very interesting that we could apply to make better products, make it easier for our customers to do their job and be more successful. And so it's exciting in that way, but it's also very challenging because you're constantly got your head on a swivel and you're saying, oh, that's really cool. And then you go dig into that. You say, well, maybe it doesn't apply, but there's something else over here that can apply. And it really fits the idea that a lot of people think that, if we go back in the room and these light bulbs all go off, which, sometimes they do, but a lot of times it's like incremental. You're taking different pieces. I mean, even the iPhone wasn't the first smartphone. They just did it in a better way. And so that's really the exciting part. And it's exciting when we can go to industry shows or see different products coming out and get out and visit your locations and see the way you're doing your work and how you're bringing different pieces into it. And that helps kind of just formulate, hypotheses or theories about things and opportunity we could work on.
So if there's no end of the process within your role, how do you define success?
You got to talk to my boss about that. But
When they renew your contract.
right. Success is measured in different ways. I think a lot of it is, and whether it's things we're doing with 50, like, doing an outside, like a research project with the university, you kind of have some defined outcomes there of what you're trying to learn, to us having, we believe there's an idea and a concept there. Well, we'll kind of define what success means to us, like what problems we want to solve. And then working with our divisional partners to say, we think this is a fit for you, or they have a need that they've identified and they come to us. We just kind of outline, here's what we want to go solve and answer. And a lot of times that means we build something digitally or physically and we take it out to our trusted partners and say, what do you think about this? Does this solve your need or not? And so that's really the measurement of success. It's like, did we prove something? Does it provide value? And obviously for us, from the time you do something and you're 5 years out to maybe something get production, that's a long time. So you can't just, it's going to go to market next year, but seeing something that was maybe originated in advanced R&D, that made it to production is super fulfilling, but there's kind of a long duration on that. So we look for a lot of wins within our group and getting feedback from our divisional and outside customers about, if we're on the right track and if it's solving problems for them.
So the solving and evolving.
That's right. Yeah. Always solving.
Yeah.
Well, before we pass it over to the assistants here for a few questions, we always like to leave the last few minutes for our guest. If there's something we didn't ask you today that you were really wanting to talk about, might help answer a few more questions that are out there.
Yeah, I think, obviously just great opportunity. This is like we said, a little different format. So it's always exciting. I just think that, as you're going through your days, your week or whatever, just know we are listening. We're trying to understand how we can help you, the best we can. And so, feel free if you've got, thoughts or ideas, share as you're here this week, share it around when people come out to visit you. Know that we greatly appreciate your time that you give us. And that you're giving us a lot of things. Even if you don't think it's just a normal part of your job, you're giving us a lot of good ways to understand how we can help you on your journey. And I think, if I segue over to kind of the advanced technology part or the emerging technology, I think a lot of times, at least in my experience, the assistant superintendents get put in a hard spot where they maybe have governance or leadership that wants the coolest next thing out there. You're caught in the space of how do I adapt to it? And I got practices. And by the way, if I make a mistake, like I've got 1,000 people that are crawling up my, what. And so I think just understanding like how you can take something and apply it and learn from it in a fairly risk-free way, right? So like I talked about, if it's something with an irrigation cycle and maybe it's going and visiting somebody that's done something with the spatial adjust and spending time with them, to if you're interested in autonomy, going out and seeing demos, talking to your other peers that are using it, applying it onto, your range. It's kind of these low risk areas is a great way to get into it and try it out. Without a lot of downside. There's not a lot of downside of doing things like that. If it doesn't work, then get it out of there. But I think it's a great comment. I think, Brian started off with the relationship part. He's 100% spot on. I think we truly value kind of what you're doing to the industry, how we can help you fulfill that mission. And we're just excited when you bring us problems. So continue to bring us our problems and opportunities.
You might be, I don't know.
Yeah. Hang on a second.
Yeah. That's an opportunity for all of us, right? So, yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, who's first?
Mine is just about like hand tools as far as weed eaters and stuff like that. Coming from California, it's more like battery operated now, moving towards. I haven't seen anything from you guys as far as that. We've demoed like Milwaukee and like Greenworks, but where is that at? Pipeline, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of that comes back to maybe distributor XYZ, but we've had, 60-volt flex force, if you've seen that at all. I mean, that's been out in the residential space since like 2017. I think we had the Revolution kind of pro version for contractors since 2020, give or take. So it's out there, it's there, and it's a whole assortment, and you'll probably see it when you walk on the tour. I mean, we've got different examples out there, but it's certainly there. And I would say they work great. I think it's the interesting thing in that handheld space, especially the pro space, is you're up against kind of the Steels, the other ones that you're used to working with, but it's definitely there. They're very viable. They work great. I think the Flex Force, myself is, I've got a wall of the handheld, fits in my snowblower. So it's fantastic in terms of the flexibility of it. And it's been in the pro space for a number of years. So
Do you have an autonomous, like one of those Mobots that has a trimmer on the outside that can just go around all the trees?
Ooh.
yeah, not yet. Although you'll see some of that, certainly some in the res space are dabbling with that. So I think you start to see more of that from a commercial viability. I question the durability of that. Kind of running
Someone
hours.
walks in front of it and gets there.
Yes. Yeah. But certainly, you're definitely seeing more of that. And I think just in the general space there, you're seeing more from, and obviously a lot of that is the standards and like what's required from a human bystander kind of foot probe thing. So some people are maybe kind of close their eyes a little bit and kind of looking past that a little bit. But again, we know that, hey, the mowing's done, but there's still trimming to do. Well, how do we solve that part of it, as well? So more, oftentimes a new innovation brings great value here, and then it creates the shift to another opportunity to solve next, for sure.
What's been the hardest piece of technology to get out of R&D into the field?
Oh, it's a good one. That is a good one. It spans a lot of different ones. I'd say probably one of the hardest ones. Well, certainly autonomy is a challenge, for sure. And it's trying to find the right intersection of, meeting standards to meeting productivity. And otherwise, I think, if I was to go back in the history of kind of time, I think anything that involves cutting, because you've got so many different, like whether it be the commercial division in Golf Expectations to our Exmark division, that's like the leader landscape contractor, to the Toro, everybody has their own view on cut quality and how that works. And so for us to come up with a different way to do it, or, hey, we found a more efficient way to cut, well, they're going to go out and test it in a way that's what they think their customer's going to do. And then everything we thought was great has failed, right? So probably if I was to put a general span over 25 or 20 plus years, it's definitely things in the cutting mechanism, because of and a lot of that goes back to like, we understand, but we don't live it every day. Like commercial division lives it every day. The landscape contractor group lives it every day. And so we're looking to them to kind of give us feedback on it. I think on the other side of the equation is really in the space of data, turf science, and understanding how do we do this in a way that creates value that can be turned into something that's useful to you. And it's not just an AI chart just blasting a whole bunch of things at you. So we spent a lot of time in that space. How do you get from out of that concept and that need over to here? And even the spatial adjust turf rat is a cool one, which is, hey, this is great. We thought people would put on mowers. Well, now it turns out they're putting on a golf course and they're still driving it. Well, that's another opportunity for us to maybe, is there a way that we could streamline that? So lots of good opportunities in there. And, I'd say the closer it is to something that's, a pillar for the division, it's always us kind of trying to find the right balance of incremental innovation or disruptive innovation for them.
So you kind of mentioned, 4 years ago, electric was kind of looking like it was going to be the new craze. I mean, for me, I don't really care about the emissions, but it's the noise and not having gasoline and hydraulic fluid on my greens.
Yeah.
What's more important to me. So do you see Toro still pushing to get more electric mowers out and rollers and that sort of, they kind of just laying down and sticking with the hybrids and conventional?
No, that's a great question, right? And I think Dan hit on it, where you've got this interesting space where there's a customer desire for it. You've got legislation and regulatory things that are flying around, or political elements flying around. I think if I look across the company now, from even, like I said, back in maybe 2015, like it's exciting for me to look across and say we effectively have like a daily maintenance fleet if you wanted to go to battery, right? And for all the reasons you said, like it's fantastic. If you have the infrastructure for it, it's fantastic. And I think the infrastructure part is still the challenge that it's hard for us to overcome from a OEM standpoint, because we're not bringing the power to your maintenance shop that, by the way, you probably can't get approval to upgrade it because they want to spend the money somewhere else. Yeah. So our view on it is we're going to continue to invest in it. We're going to continue to make it an offering, because we want our customers to have that option. If you want to have a gas diesel, knock yourself out. If you want hybrid, if you want all electric, we're going to be there for you, while we continue to monitor, at least in our space, is where are things going. And so, certainly battery technology is advancing, and you're starting to see 10-minute recharges, which sounds great. Hey, this is going to solve it. You still have the same problem of getting the power to your maintenance shop.
Right.
So what can we be doing that's understanding those constraints, and even thinking about how do we balance your charge cycle needs? If we understand, and not to get too far behind the scenes, but we'll just say, I understand what your typical work week looks like for when your equipment's being used. Well, then I can start to understand what power do you have available. Well, how can I match that in a way from a use to charge availability and kind of cycle through in like a smart charge sort of way? Because the infrastructure part's going to be an obstacle no matter what we do. It's going to continue to be an obstacle. So how do we get innovative in that space so that, if you got a customer like you that wants it for all the reasons you said and can get there, that you can implement it and you don't have to say, oh, this is great. I want to have all this equipment. Oh, by the way, I got to completely raise my maintenance shop and you got to bring, all this new power in, and it's just super challenging. And that part of the infrastructure is not unique to you. You got landscape contractors that want to move their whole fleet to electric, but they're in, rented locations in different cities. Well, they're not going to put all that power into those same things. So there's a lot of opportunity in that space. I think we're spending a lot of time in that part of the equation. Just how do we make this so it just works for you and it just is sequencing and charging the right way with the available power you have.
Yeah, you talked about like the labor shortage as a major issue, and I think we would all agree that like finding good equipment managers and mechanics is a big deal in the industry. So is Toro working on any solution for a new opportunity, as you would say, where you're kind of asking them to do a lot of like software work or different work with the autonomous mowers?
There's probably a few different ways to kind of talk through that. I'd say from an equipment standpoint, we're trying to do it in a way where it doesn't require, an engineering degree to go out and work on this thing, or 40 years of working in automotive on cars to go work on it. So improving like our diagnostic tools where it's a simple plug-in, very clear, like, if you got a fault or whatever, very clear on how to step through that. In the autonomy ones, it's same idea, but, more connected, more information that's human, readable. So not just fault codes, but like do this and how you solve it. So, we're understanding there's kind of this interesting intersection of technology and the team that needs to take care of it, but understanding kind of who the team is taking care of it and really, again, back to understanding our customers, understanding what you need. And how do we get that to a level where it's very easy to take care of and it doesn't require, hey, I got to call my distributor out here every time I've got a fault on this because I don't know how to debug it. It's really just needs me to, adjust a boundary or something like that. And so there's a balance there, but I think it's if we make it uber complex, it's hard to adopt, right? So we just know we're going to constantly be trying to improve how well we can service and support it, provide information to you real time and otherwise, and get you up and running as quick as possible.
What's a piece of equipment that's how you should love?
Oh, on the spot.
You want to take my seat?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Oh, that is a good one. I can give you the corporate answer. Like we lead in everything. So it's fantastic, but
We're number one. No big deal.
Yeah. Man, that spans a long ways. I struggle a little bit on the golf side, but there's probably tons of examples. I think, things like the automated irrigation is always an interesting one to point to. If I think about our journey back on, even, and Dan went through it, even like with our dingo and our attachment there is understanding kind of where that market is today. Wishing we would have maybe, made some other bigger choices back then, but, it's a little bit hard to answer that because I feel like we're in a really good spot. And I think we're trying to always push the boundaries a little bit. And a little bit of that is our own idea of trying to disrupt ourselves, at least a little bit. But you're putting me on the spot, so I might have to get back to you on that.
Kevin, Brett?
Yeah. So the autonomous mowers, where are they at productivity wise in comparison to, I would say, your average worker? And where do you hope to be?
Well, it'll never be finished. And a lot of it goes back to the technology is going to keep evolving. But, a little bit, I would say it depends on the product and kind of what you're trying to do. So if you're thinking of like the Greensmaster E3360, so, triplex, high power, productivity is very, very similar. It always shows up every day and it always found. So if you part that equation, like if it's exceeding it, but from like an actual productivity standpoint, it's very much, I would say, within squinting eyes of being kind of human operator with all the benefits of, turning around in varying spots. So it's not running over the exact same turnaround spot, things like that. I think the smaller mobiles called low energy turtles, the low energy ones, that's a different equation, right? Because those have to go out like every day to kind of keep up, but it's taking care of it. Unless you have challenges with like leaves and sticks and, helicopters like we get here in the Midwest, and that requires some, high power suction to take care of it. So certainly, our journey is to make sure it's running and it's not stopping. Because if it's stopping, it's stopping you, right? If you're getting faults, if you're getting advisories, like you're getting distracted, then you need to be overdoing something else. And so our ultimate goal is keep it safe, be highly productive. So it's out there just running, and do it in a way that's, I would say, offsetting. I would say offsetting. So it's not like we're trying to displace labor. It's more get the job done here. I've got this amount of staff. I need to go take care of, water issues or otherwise. But trying to get to parity is to me a good target for where the technology is today. Just because we underestimate as humans how much we've learned for 52 years about what's right and wrong. And to teach a mechanism it takes time. But I think that's where there's things, and talked about AI a little in the beginning about, the learning and improving and how we can put it into kind of simulated loops about do this, do that, make this choice. I think will help accelerate that. But it's going to be, I think the next 5 years will continue to be exciting in terms of how we close that gap and make it highly productive and kind of connect the overall and robotic fleet together.
Is there a life expectancy for the autonomous units compared to the mowing unit itself, where a good mechanic can kind of keep that going? When you guys are putting those autonomous units together, is it like, okay, this should work for 5 to 10 years before we're going to need to start updating that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So maybe the example, so like the low energy ones, those are like a self-contained where you're probably going to wear the whole platform out, and you have to look at kind of the service level on it. But certainly the commercial ones like the Toro, we're expecting a long, durability cycle out of those. And I think about like the E3360 Greensmaster, or even like on our contractor side where we have like the ProLine AMI or the Expert Turf Tracer 60-inch. The platforms are like, they are Toro, they are Exmark. Those platforms will run a long time. And the technology that's on there, you'd certainly say, hey, is it the same software load? No, we're going to continue to update software. We're going to continue to bring updated software to it. I think that the challenging part is, you'd say, if I bought one today, and let's say 10 years from now, it's a hover unit. Well, that's a different thing. But the technology you have today, whether it's RTK or if we have LiDAR or otherwise, it's still going to work just as well in 5 or 10 years. It's just that you might not have the latest and greatest. It's similar, I'd almost say, like you think about automotive, right? So a car I buy today got great features. The car I buy 10 years from now is going to have a lot more cooler features. The one I have will still work, but if I want to upgrade, then it's there. So I think the platforms it's part of the strength we have with building them off of what I call like traditional platforms, is that it's got all the reliability of, the durability you run of, and it just happens to be autonomous. And we'll continue to bring software updates out there to continue advancing it. But as technologies changes, we can evolve to it and kind of work through that cycle over time. So, yeah.
Kind of going off that, do you see the autonomous stuff ever kind of becoming module? So, say you got your triplexes and they're about to go off a lease. Okay, I could take off the robo mower and stick it on the new ones. In the future, or is that going to be like same thing as what you were just saying? It's going to get better, so why keep the old one?
I think it kind of goes both ways. I think there's a little bit around from a use case, from a longevity standpoint. Certainly, I think that's an objective that we put out there, and that's of interest. At the same time, that becomes a 3-year cycle out. Okay, that means more feasible. You're probably not going to do that on the second cycle, right? Just from the technology gap standpoint. But a lot of that comes back to the platform, right? So part of the things that we need for autonomy to really be effective and be responsive and have the safety systems in there tend to be like the drive-by-wire is like kind of your first entry. And so as more of our fleet has that opportunity, and certainly the electrification or hybrid like takes us on that journey too. So it's a very complementary electrification to hybrid to autonomy that we can be looking around and say we can get to a point where it could be a modular, called a system that bolts onto the, whether the sunshade or otherwise, and you would have that opportunity. And then it becomes kind of that balance of, is it worth it to upgrade? Is the technology still relevant? And certainly, like I said, I think we're doing everything we can to continue to bring software updates and improvements to it. So as it goes, it continues to be valuable. And it's not like, well, I bought it last year. I'm going to wait for 2 years because it's going to be so much better. We're going to continue to bring software updates to it and expand the capabilities. I mean, even the mowers we have out today, the 3360, it's, certainly fairway, but we have intent to take it on other parts of the course and bring software enabled to do that as we move forward in the next year.
Are you guys looking at all like electric walk mowers? Yeah. Sometimes there's a task where the battery, whatever, maybe your guy have to have 2 mowers to finish the morning task. Is there any thought of making it where you can swap a battery into the same mower rather than, grabbing a second one?
we definitely have talked about that a lot. And I think, I mean, it's kind of becomes the application there as far as does it make sense? Is there the customer value to it? And certainly in the contractor residential space for like traditional rotaries, we've had that for a number of years, right? So with the Flex Force packs, again, you'll see when you walk down the hallway. So you can do the Flex Force packs all you want. There's been a lot of discussion in the commercial side as far as when, is there a market for that now, or there is a market ready for that battery swap. And so it's of interest. I think it's of interest even as we look at our higher energy ones with the multi hypercells. And we've done a little bit of kind of balancing that where we allow you to add extra hypercells. Let's say you got a big tournament coming up and you can add more hypercells into it. And so absolutely it's in there. And I think it's, as you go to your week, you certainly got a lot of commercial division here that would be listening to say, is it an opportunity, and is it an opportunity now, or something we should be putting into MGPP, which we consider like our multi-generational product plan. A lot of companies do that, but that's where you're kind of planning out kind of your sequence of innovation in a more logical cycle. So I'm sure it's being discussed. I couldn't tell you exactly where it's at there though. So
We got time for one more. The assistant superintendent position is not a sit still position, so we got to get you guys up and moving.
How much is Toro involved in like R&D and stuff for like a lot of these companies that you guys have acquired, say Ventrac, for example, like doing research for them and autonomy for those type of mowers and stuff like that? Or do they have their own separate group that kind of works on, that Ventrac brand or what?
Yeah, no, I think certainly like our role as intent is to be kind of across the various divisions. I think there's a few examples that maybe, and I would say every division has their own, within their division, they have maybe they're closer to production R&D teams. So they're all super creative. They're coming up with new ideas. And I think, I would say there's maybe a little bit less crossover directly for our team, like say with Ditch Witch, because Ditch Witch has a huge team. They have an R&D team. So we're connecting where it kind of makes sense, where we can help them. Ventrac's another example, and Ventrac's a fun one because they're just uber creative. They understand their customer really well. And so we complement them. But they're doing a lot of things on their own. And then we're also bringing some things to them. And I mean, I guess one example I give offhand is like the weed-buying attachment. I think that they introduced a year or so ago, and that originated on our team, working with them as an example of how to take care of weeds without having to spray, fertilizer or herbicide down. So, but there's lots of examples. I think in the autonomy one, we're absolutely talking with them. We're looking at them and where it fits. The challenge is turfgrass. Okay, we got that. When you come to cutting grass like that, we're working on side hills, that's a very complex problem to solve. So we are absolutely working on them with that, but it's a different kind of problem to solve and making sure you're safe and there isn't something in front of you that you shouldn't be running over, that a normal operator would say, oh, I got to stop, right?
Awesome. Tons of great questions. Yeah. Put you on the spot today.
Thought it wasn't recorded.
Yeah.
Nevertheless. Yeah, you can edit all the good stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, John. This was fantastic. You did a great job.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it. All right. Thank you.
That is going to do it for us. A huge thank you to John for sitting down with us again. That was so much fun to do. Listening back to it through the editing process, there's so many other questions I would love to ask him. So he may be somebody we have to bring back on and dive into kind of, our more of our own kind of conversation, talk about his career and some of the things that he's done. And to everybody at Toro, we cannot thank you enough. I know we've said it a few times on here, but it's the truth. The people that work for Toro and the ideas and the minds and everything behind what goes on there was incredible. And getting to be down at the facilities and at Toro headquarters, the offices, out on their putting greens and all their research facilities, it's not just a mower. There's been so many different people and tests that went into that mower so you could cut the grass. It's absolutely incredible. I can't thank you guys enough. We'll see you next week. Keep those reels sharp.
run it back. Because I'm awfully deceiving. I always say I'm fine, but that's not the true meaning. The walls are caving in and it leaves me with feelings, but the only one that matters is I won't be defeated. They'll keep talking, pray that I lost it. I keep it cool, my attitude stay frosted, and I'm intending to bring a revolution. There far too many problems, but far few solutions. So let's march towards the hills. Let's march with the dreams to be fulfilled. The pen is planning, I'm making them sign a bill. Letting out the future is hard to me still. And all I know is I just need a. All I know is you just need a. All I know is we just need a. All I know is you just need a. All I know is you just need a. All I know is I just need a breathe. All I know is you just need a breathe. All I know is we just need a breathe. All I know is you just need a breathe. All I know is I just need a breathe. All I know is you just need a breathe. All I know is we just need a breathe. All I know is you just need a